Okay, so today we are going to be going over the English language learner's historical timeline. The first act, not act, but like the first um, case that went down was the Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, which made clear that states are responsible for providing students with equal educational opportunities, opening the way for high-quality bilingual programs. And with other segregation cases have made it clear that ELLs cannot be fully separated from other students throughout their education under the guise of helping them learn English. And the Brown versus Board of Education opened the way for English language learners. English language learners shouldn't be separated from the main classroom because that is where they learn English. But they do need instruction on assignments so that they fully understand what they are learning in the classroom. If they're separated, they won't be getting the necessary English education that they need to help them understand and learn English, but they do need the instruction sometimes in their own language to understand what is going on. The next is Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, which funds policies and procedure that target students from low-income families. And this act helps ELL students in the classroom get some help where they don't have to sink or swim. This act also helps open the gates for ELLs because they would get the funds and procedures that they needed to succeed in the classroom so they wouldn't fail. If the schools didn't get the funds and the procedures that they needed, these students would sink or swim, and they would be suffering because they wouldn't be learning English to help them survive in the classroom. The Title VII Bilingual Education Act of 1968 is next, which provides grants to school districts and other eligible entities to help bilingual education programs. This act has been reauthorized numerous times, and each reauthorization resulted in greater recognition of the personal and societal benefits of bilingualism and bilingual education. Even though this act has undergone many revisions, it was done so that English language learners would get the help that they really needed. It was also revised so that English language learners would get the recognition that they needed. And this act did help. It gave them the attention that they needed so that people would look at them and be like, oh, this child really needs help. Let's do something about it. Next was Lau v. Nichols in 1974, and students were placed in mainstream classrooms despite their lack of proficiency in English and left to sink or swim. The court disagreed by saying there is no equality of treatment merely by providing students with the same facilities, textbooks, teachers, and curriculum. For students who do not understand English, are effectively foreclosed from any meaningful education. These Chinese students were not getting the attention that they needed, so that they were left to either make it or break it. The case went over how these students' education was being neglected because they didn't know English. The court said how there is no equality for these students, but the Equal Opportunities Act was made, which helped bilingual students succeed in school. And since these students were being neglected, they weren't getting the attention that they needed to help them survive in the classroom and to grow in their academic career, and because of this, students are succeeding now. Next is the Equal Opportunities Act of 1974, which implemented after Lau v. Nichols. This act declares no state shall deny educational opportunities to an individual on account of his or her race, color, sex, or national origin. This act helped get rid of bilingual segregation in the classroom so that the English language learners would get the attention that they needed and their education would not be neglected just because they could not understand English when they are there to learn English and succeed in school. This act has really helped these students because they are getting the attention that they needed to help them survive, not necessarily survive, but help them understand English and to get better and understand what's going on. Castaneda versus Pickard in 1981 was an outcome of this case is a three-pronged test to determine whether schools are taking appropriate action to address the needs of English language learners as required by the Equal Educational Opportunities Act. This case helped determine if schools are doing whatever it takes to help English language learners succeed in school. It also made sure that these students' needs were being met so that they are getting the same opportunity to do well in school. And this court case has alongside Lau v. Nichols, has helped English language learners do well in school because it showed people that these kids are not doing so well, and because of the three-pronged test that was made because of this court case, which is taking appropriate action, which is really good because these students need to be addressed and helped throughout their academic career so that they can learn English and understand what's going on. The No Child Left Behind Act of 2001 is next, and this act brought some attention to their needs, but it tended to discourage bilingual education programs. Evidence shows that the No Child Left Behind's technical flaws, unrealistic expectations, and over-reliance on high-stakes tests ended up causing more harm than good. This act helped students to succeed, but it just breezed over the students who really needed help. And yes, it did have its flaws and unrealistic expectations, but it brought attention to the English language learners' needs. Yes, it might have set back the English language learners a little bit, but it did bring to people's attention that they needed help, and it did everything that it can to help these students. Race to the Top in 2009 is next, and it expected to develop high-quality assessments that were valid and reliable for all students, including English language learners and students with disabilities. It expressed concern that English language learner issues were not being adequately addressed, and that groups expressed concern that English language learner issues were not being adequately addressed, and that RTTT continued the emphasis on high-stakes testing. English language learners were being left out, but they were still being addressed. They weren't just getting the necessary attention they needed. Students were still being taught to regurgitate information for tests. So English language learners were only learning what they needed to know and not fully taking in the information and processing it. This is also just like the No Child Left Behind. It did address their needs and gave them some attention that they needed, but it only taught them to take in information and regurgitate it back. It didn't teach them to take in the information, process it, understand it, for them to fully understand English and succeed in school. Elementary and Secondary Education Act Flexibility of 2011 is next, and it expected to establish interventions focused on improving the performance of English language learners. This act basically revised the Elementary and Secondary Education Act to where it gave more focus on English language learners so that teachers would give them more attention so that their performance in school would improve and that would lead them to succeeding in school. This act improved the No Child Left Behind Act and the Race to the Top Act, and it gave English language learners the attention that they needed, and it helped teachers to perform interventions with them, which helped them to succeed in school. Next is Every Student Succeeds Act of 2015. It is an improvement over No Child Left Behind and affords states an opportunity to establish more flexibility and reasonable expectations for English language learners and other students in their schools. Affords states much greater flexibility in establishing school accountability programs. This act gave English language learners more realistic expectations for them to succeed in school. It also established programs for English language learners to go to so that they could get the help that they needed to understand what they were being taught and so that they could fully learn English. This act really helped students nowadays since it gave English language learners the realistic expectations that they could meet, which would allow them to succeed in school. And it gave them programs so that they could go to be taught in their language or give interventions in English to help them understand what they are learning in either their language or in English so they could fully understand English in however way they were being taught. And that's it.